Japanese is one of the few languages in the world that have a unique way of using the passive voice. Specifically, Japanese has a type of passive called the indirect passive, which is also called the adversative passive. In this video, I will explain the features of the indirect passive and how to use and interpret indirect passive sentences in Japanese. The first and the most distinctive feature of the indirect passive is that you can use verbs that do not take direct or indirect objects. For example, the verb for to die in Japanese is shinu, and shinu is a verb that does not take an object. So you do not say watashi wa anata o shinu or watashi wa anata ni shinu, just like you would never say in English, I die you. In most languages, if a verb cannot take an object, then the verb cannot be turned into the passive form. So in English, you cannot say, for example, I am died or I was died by you. However, the Japanese equivalent of these ungrammatical English sentences are possible and rather common. Let's look at the most simple example. Watashi wa anata ni shinareta, where shinareta is the passive form of the verb shinu. The literal translation of this sentence would be, I was died by you, which sounds wrong in English. To understand this sentence better and to interpret it in the most natural way, I need to introduce the concept of adversity. As I said at the beginning of this video, the indirect passive in Japanese is often called the adversative passive, where the word adversative derives from the word adversity. What this means is that an indirect passive sentence often conveys a sense of adversity. Adversity in this sense can be any negative event that affects you, whether it be physically, mentally, emotionally, or any other way. And the person who is experiencing this adversity is usually the subject of the sentence. Or, if the subject is omitted, it is often the speaker who is the experiencer of this adversity. Alternatively, you could think of it as annoyance or inconvenience, as many of the indirect passive sentences that we use predominantly express these ideas. Now, returning to our example, watashi wa anata ni shinareta. In this sentence, the subject is watashi, who is also the speaker, and this watashi is saying that anata's death affected them negatively or inconvenienced them in some way. So this sentence implies that watashi did not want or expect anata to die, and this death affected watashi negatively. Instead of merely stating the fact that anata died, this sentence focuses more on the negative experience and the emotions of the speaker who is going through this unfortunate event. On a side note, the closest English equivalent of this sentence would be, you died on me, which expresses a fairly similar idea but using the active voice instead of the passive voice. The second feature of the indirect passive is that you often add an extra individual who would not be part of the active counterpart of the indirect passive sentence in question. Let me explain this in detail. Consider the active sentence, 敵が城を攻めた. The enemies attacked the castle. The normal passive version of this sentence would be 城が敵に攻められた. The castle was attacked by the enemies. However, in the indirect passive version of this sentence, you get an extra person added to the sentence, seemingly out of nowhere. 将軍は城を敵に攻められた. This sentence does not translate very well into English if we try to translate literally. However, remember that the indirect passive often expresses negative experiences. So in this sentence, the focus is on the negative experience of the shogun as his castle is being attacked, rather than the actual event in which the enemies are attacking the castle. So you could say that the indirect passive allows you to express your experience of undergoing a negative event. Sometimes, it is not very apparent who is being affected negatively in an indirect passive sentence. For instance, あの家は5年前持ち主に死なれて以来空き家らしい. Apparently, that house has been vacant since the owner died 5 years ago. The subject is あの家, that house, but it seems nonsensical to say that a house can experience any emotions. And indeed, it is not the house that is being affected negatively in this case. My own interpretation of this sentence is that it is the speaker of this sentence who is expressing their negative experience caused by the prolonged vacancy of the house, and it is very likely that this sentence would be uttered by a neighbor who lives near the house and is probably concerned about the negative social and economical implications of having a vacant house sitting in their neighborhood for an extended period of time. Now that we have gone over two of the main features of the indirect passive, let's look at more examples. The first example is あいつに駅で見られたんだけど. I was seen by that guy at the train station. In this sentence, the verb miru is in the passive form, mirareru. Usually, you would translate this sentence as a simple passive sentence, but this example conveys a strong sense of annoyance, meaning you found it annoying that you were seen by the person in question. In the second example, 今来られても困る. It would be an inconvenience if you came now. The verb 来る is in the passive form, 来られる. Just like in this sentence, the indirect passive is often accompanied by the phrase 困る, to be trouble, to be inconvenient, to be annoying. The third example, 冷蔵庫に入れといたケーキ食べられた. The cake that I had in the fridge got eaten. This sentence also seems like a normal passive sentence. This also conveys a feeling of annoyance. The fourth example, 昨日帰り道に雨に降られた. I got rained on my way home yesterday. This expression is very common in Japanese. You can also use other weather expressions such as 雪に降られる, 雷に打たれる, 風に吹かれる, and 雨に打たれる. This example also expresses a sense of adversity and annoyance. Before we end this video, I must state one important fact about the indirect passive. Among native Japanese speakers, there is a great deal of variability in terms of whether they find indirect passive sentences acceptable or correct. Some Japanese speakers outright reject almost all indirect passive sentences, including the examples introduced in this video. Most people accept the majority of indirect passive sentences, but reject some sentences. For example, most Japanese people will not find the following sentences acceptable. 東京は地震に起きられた. Tokyo was happened by an earthquake. And メガネに机の上にあられた. The glasses were on the table. These examples show that you cannot really use some specific verbs in the indirect passive construction, such as 起きる to happen and ある to be. I hope my explanation and the examples made sense. Let me know if you have any questions or requests, and check out my other videos by clicking here. See you next time.